I think most of us recognize the physical symptoms of anxiety. We don't always know that they are physical symptoms of anxiety. So I think sometimes it can be that horrible feeling of dread that something terrible is going to happen. Physically, people talk about like they feel like they've got butterflies in their stomach, clammy hands, feeling very sweaty, heart beating really quickly, feeling like you've got to breathe really heavily. So they're really sort of quite intense and quite distressing physical symptoms when you don't know that they're part of, you experiencing some, a reaction to a stressful situation. Hard to understand how somebody can go from what feels like a common mental health problem to suddenly thinking that their life, they will be better off dead. But I think if you think about that level of distress and that sense of, so feeling trapped in a situation, and feeling overwhelmed, and what your body is telling you to do when you're stuck in that situation is it's telling you to run away. And you know it's hard to describe unless I'm sure lots of people have experienced it. It's not really a thought and it's not really a feeling. It's like an instinct to get away from a threat situation. And the reason that it will turn into, it can end up with somebody getting into a suicidal crisis is because they then can't identify any alternatives, and they feel like suicide is a way of getting away from the distress that they're feeling, which can come from that place of anxiety. So we use an intervention called lay your cards on the table, and in the very first sort of session that the men have with the therapist, we break that experience down. So we get them to think about what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they're doing, and perhaps what their body is what they're experiencing physically when they're feeling at this point of crisis. And we can then sort of, it's called psychoeducation. We will then help them to understand that the physical sensations that they're experiencing are in fact symptoms of anxiety, and there are ways that you can learn to manage and overcome those feelings. And in fact, once we can identify the triggers and what's happening, then the men can start thinking about how they can do things differently, so that they're managing those feelings of anxiety and they're not pushing them to the place where they become so distressed that they think that suicide is an option.